Yogi's been doing schooling sessions with him as well. So, you know, if the miracle does work, he's definitely the one for me, but I'm obviously in a very biased position.
Can you remember any day in your career where you felt like immense pressure? And I know people say, oh, pressure is a privilege. Yeah, bull.
That's the quote from the trading room on Staffordshire Not Barry.
We'll have to just wait and see, I guess, DK.
But the trading room haven't heard that Barry Geraghty's tipping it. The comment is going to change when this podcast goes live. Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Inside Track Ireland, our brand new weekly racing podcast brought to you by William Hill, the best value bookmaker. This is our second week. We will be bringing you all of the leading stories across Irish racing and some of the main stories across from the UK as well. We will be reflecting on the Dublin Racing Festival. We'll be looking ahead to the weekend, and I'll be doing so with my man Barry Geraghty, who was in top form last week, tipping his nap fact to file in what looked like a fantastic Irish Gold Cup. But Barry, you never wavered.
No, it was a brilliant performance. I suppose I've been looking forward to him. You know, for me, he's a coming of age horse. He was dropped in last year in that race. He ran a bit keen, didn't jump as well, where I knew he was going to be ridden, or I guessed he was going to be ridden forward this time, which was going to suit him. Found the rhythm jumping, was more relaxed and put in the performance he expected. You know, he was brilliant in the Ryanair last year. He was brilliant in the Brown Advisor the year before. He's a quality individual, and I think he's a worthy favourite for the Gold Cup on the back of what was a brilliant performance in a brilliant race.
Well, I admired how defiant and resolute you were right up until the off. There was no wavering. We were standing beside each other at Leopardstown, and not once did you have any qualms about who your selection was. I was with Each Way I Am Maximus. I think we found out the difference between a good horse and really good horses. I think he got set apart. We must reference the Trojan work that was put in by the racecourse team to actually making the racecourse happen. Can you remember a time at Leopardstown where they have basically been pumping water off the track? Like, we all saw the videos and the pictures over the weekend. How we were racing was a marvel.
Yeah, I know, it was brilliant, and that all testament to Paddy Graffin and the team at Leopardstown. They did brilliantly. Massive work went into it. And the ground they produced was, it was soft. Even on the chase track, they were calling it soft. I'd say it could have been fractionally slower, but it was great conditions of winter going. It was tough work, but it suited plenty of horses and great results. But we were there in 2000, I think it was, when the second and third they were called off, and they ran the Christmas hurdle as the first race on the fourth day, and Istabrack fell at the last. There was four of us upsides. I won at a Moscow Flyer. Stage Affair and Mantle's Prince were between me and Istabrack when he came down at the last, but that was pretty attritional that day as well. So something similar to that, I think.
Just the 20 odd years ago. But look, you won anyway, so it's a memory you'll always have. Another race you've won quite a lot is the Boyne Hurdle. So we're gonna reference the Dublin Racing Festival and the key talking points a little bit later on, but we're also going to preview the weekend ahead, and that features a quality card at Naas. I'm going to be there tomorrow for Racing TV, and the William Hill sponsor Boyne Hurdle, the 10-up chase, some very good racing at Navan, which is subject to an inspection at 3 p.m. midday on Saturday. So hopefully that goes ahead. And I know, Barry, you won a lot of races in your career, any amount of grade ones. I'm sure you can tell me. I can't tell you off the top of my head. But you are the winning most jockey of the Boyne Hurdle. Did you know that?
I didn't actually, Jane, no, but thanks for passing it on.
Can you name the winners that you rode?
I'm going to have a go at it now. Navan, probably one of my favourite tracks. Brilliant track, lovely track to ride, real proper test. And you need a really good stayer, especially on slow ground. But I won it twice, an emotional moment for Tom Taff, who was the home-based syndicate from down your country, kind of West Waterford, Cork area. Great bunch of lads, and he was a good horse. Did well over fences too. He was good. How would you say, multitasker, if you like. But no, he was a sweet horse, and he won it twice. Then I won it on Cazal before he went on to be third in the Stayers Hurdle to English Drever. He was a smart horse, really good stayer. Owen Griffin trained him, another Waterford connection. And then Sutton Place was my last winner.
He never fulfilled his potential, did he?
No, he didn't. No, he remember the first day I rode him was in a listed hurdle in Naas. and he won it. I think it was his first time over hurdles, and he won a big performance. So he was a horse we were excited about, but different injuries and hold-ups along the way just prevented him, I suppose, from reaching that potential. But he put in a good performance to win the Boyne Hurdle at this. So it's been a lucky race, and probably but one of my favourite tracks now. I just love it.
Well, Barry, maybe you're going to win it again this year. The listeners are just going to have to hold on a little bit longer to find out who you're with. So William Hill are now non-runner money back on all 28 races from the Cheltenham Festival in March. So you can have a safe bet in the knowledge that if your runner doesn't turn up in March, you will be getting your money back just in time. Just now that the DRF is done, we all know a little bit more. So let's kick into the DRF. Let's kick into the magic high-profile performances. We anticipated a vintage renewal of the Irish Gold Cup, and I think it delivered, with the exception of, I know the way you're thinking, all of the main protagonists turned up and ran their races. I think currently at the time of talking, Factifile is 7-2 for the Cheltenham Gold Cup non-runner money back with William Hill, but he's 4-5 for the Ryanair. He has to get supplemented, surely.
Well, I know the way you're thinking was supplemented last year, so I can't see it being any different. JP would love to win the Ryanair, but I'm sure he'd far prefer to win the Gold Cup. So I can't see it being any other way. So I'd imagine he'll go there, and it was a brilliant performance, and I think it's one he can build on as well. He obviously, conditions were ideal for him, but he's not necessarily reliant on that. So no, it was a top class performance. Jumped, settled, travelled, everything you'd like. Gaelic Warrior likewise on a big race then in second, because he ran so keen through the race with Patrick Mullen. So he possibly comes into the Ryanair equation. And there's probably a few layers to that conversation, because Galloping the Champ, he ran a good race at Christmas, but I saw him in the ring and he looked very ready at Christmas, and the general feeling was that there was a lot of work rushed into him for Christmas, and that might have just taken its effect on a toll on him for the race at the Dublin Racing Festival. So he could have just, and I think he did underperform for that reason. So if he was still to go for the Gold Cup, which is highly likely, and Paul Townend has to choose between him and Gaelic Warrior, maybe that would be the reason why Gaelic Warrior would go for the Ryanair. And as you mentioned, non-runner money back, have a go with Gaelic Warrior then on the Ryanair, maybe would be an option.
Yeah, you've anticipated the question I was going to ask. If you're Paul Townend, and just say Rich Ritchie tells Willie Mullins, Gaelic Warrior's running in the Gold Cup, forget the Ryanair, right? For a second. Does the heart rule the head? Do you believe that Galloping the Champ is a better horse now, today, in 2026, than Galloping the Champ?
Difficult one to say, and they'll have a better idea on what Galloping the Champ turned up last weekend. But the Galloping the Champ that won at Punchestown, that could have been a career best. So that's not that long ago. He ran a reasonable race at Christmas for his first run. He's been to Cheltenham twice, he's won twice. It's been said, was he at his best when he got beaten in the Gold Cup last year? But to come back and win a Gold Cup, having lost one and won two, it would be unbelievable. Age would be against him in that regard. But I'm not fully convinced that Cheltenham plays to Gaelic Warrior's strengths. He runs keen, he jumps a little to his right, hangs a bit to his right. All of those things, they come together, because when a horse keeps pulling and jumping right and hanging to his right, he stays in your hand. It's very hard to switch him off. And especially over that kind of trip where you're going a fraction slower, where he'd be a much more comfortable ride in the Ryanair. He wouldn't be as simple in a Gold Cup. That's not saying he wouldn't win one, but it would be a difficult ride. If Galloping the Champ was to reproduce the level of form he put in at Punchestown at the festival last season, it'd be a difficult decision.
Okay, but just the race is tomorrow. You have to ride one. Call it.
Well, tomorrow you'd have to go Gaelic Warrior, because Galloping the Champ underperformed, but that's not March, that's tomorrow.
Yeah, I come on, give us the answer for March. I think you still, in my opinion, have to go for Gaelic Warrior, or for Galloping the Champ. Sorry, because all I ever hear from you guys, Ruby Walsh, yourself, anybody who's won a Gold Cup, is that extra 2 furlongs really separates the stayers from the people who stay, the horses who stay 3 miles. Is that going to be a factor in play for all of the protagonists? Like, Factifile is yet to prove himself at that trip.
He is, but I think you will get it, because he got it well in the Brown Advisory 2 years ago. There's no reason to suggest he won't for me. If you're trying to pick between two, I would always say, how would it feel to sit on one watching the other win? So if you're sitting on Gaelic Warrior watching Galloping the Champ win, how would you feel?
Oh,
You
well,
know, would
Paul
you be saying,
Townend would
what?
just not come home, I'd say.
Yeah, so like, if he was to sit on Galloping the Champ watching Gaelic Warrior win, would that be slightly easier, if you know what I'm saying? So it's a difficult one, but you know, it'd be hard if Galloping the Champ was to be back on song at home on the lead up to Cheltenham, it'd be very hard to get off him.
And of course, ground will play its factor as well, because I do think the Cheltenham Gold Cup last year probably was run on too quick a ground for Galloping the Champ to show his optimum. So that's all ahead of us, as is the Champion Chase. And I was hoping to see a performance from Majborough that would suggest that he could win a Champion Chase. He was a very good novice, but he always kind of self-sabotaged himself with bad jumping and pulling hard. We will reference Mark Walsh's performance in the saddle after this, but that was an extraordinary display in the in the Dublin Chase.
It was. He jumped brilliantly. Obviously went forward with the cheap pieces, and you could see him at the first fence. He came out of Mark's hands and pinged it. You know, he never touched the twig the way around. The second last the same, pinged it, rolled down the straight, jumped the last really well. I'd say the cheap pieces were a big help to help him focus and concentrate. But those conditions were probably ideal for him too. He was able to dictate himself. He wasn't hassled at the front end. I think better ground obviously brings Marine Nationale more into play, and the performance he put up at Christmas to make that mistake, give away all that ground, and still get back so close to solidness with Majborough behind them. You know, you wouldn't want to forget that. That's a strong level of form. He's been there, he's done it as well. So I think the ground come March is a big key to this race. And I think the soft ground, the description of soft in Leopardstown was probably being kind to it. I'd say it was every bit slower than soft. So I'm a big fan of Majborough. It was great to see him get it together, but I think it will be a different race if you're in Cheltenham on good soft ground.
Yeah, but I couldn't agree more. And like, you can't wait for all these Cheltenham preview nights to start when you have absolutely no idea what the ground is going to be like, and you don't really know the final field, but you have to make a decision and you have to have a stand by it, shall we say. But at the time of talking, Majborough is 15-8, Marine Nationale is 5-2, non-runner money back for the Champion Chase. And I just want to reference for people who are listening that Majborough, he gained 16 lengths in jumping over the field in Leopardstown. I think Energumen was the only other horse that actually increased through jumping. Everybody else lost ground through jumping. Marine Nationale is definitely a better jumper than we saw at Leopardstown, and I would probably put it down to the ground, because all they've ever said, connections, is that he's a good ground horse and he's a speedy horse. So I'm not willing to completely dismiss him yet.
No, and I wouldn't, and that's why I don't mean to sit on the fence, but I think he's back into play on better ground. And you're highly unlikely to get anything as slow as regards going as you got at Dublin, at the Dublin Racing Festival. You won't get that at Cheltenham. So I think Marine Nationale is a big player, obviously, and I'd be slow to rule him out. But you know, great to see Majborough pull it together and get it together. But I just think it will be a different story on better ground.
Is there any UK horse that's going to live with them in March?
Oh, it's hard to say.
John Bond's going to go Ryanair, isn't he?
Yeah, I would imagine so. Yeah, I'd imagine. So,
it'll probably end up being a small field, but it'll be very tactical. And one man who's getting the tactics very right at the moment, Barry, is Mark Walsh. And everybody knows the couple of weeks that Mark has had, and JP, retaining Harry Cobden going into next season. But Mark Walsh is going to make hay before that happens. A 4-timer, all at Grade 1 level, Factophile, Majborough, Narciso Haas and Kate Doughty, riding like a man possessed. Like he was so positive on Majborough. He was very positive on Kate Doughty. He was tactically versatile on Narciso Haas and Factophile. I thought that was one of the news stories to come out of the weekend. It was really pleasing to see that for a guy who's never really got the credit for his achievements.
Yeah, I'd say you're right in that. And it was brilliant to see, and Mark was brilliant on all of those. He never put a foot wrong in anything. They jumped brilliantly. As you say, he judged it from the front. Narciso Haas was a great ride, quickened from the second last. Majborough isn't straightforward. and he made him look straightforward. It was a really good ride, and I like that he was positive and went about it. Factify, likewise, similar, really positive, went and rode his horse, aggressively and made use of him. So no, it's brilliant to see, and it is a pressure pot. Any of these big grade ones, and Mark didn't show any sign of pressure. He dealt well with the whole week, and no, it's great to see it. It's great to see him proving himself again. So he's a top class rider, and he's worthy of all the opportunity he gets.
Can you remember any day in your career where you felt like immense pressure?
Immense pressure.
And I know people say, "Oh, pressure is a privilege." Yeah, bull. Like, people feel pressure, and sometimes it affects performance. Can you remember even your younger days if there was a oh, this has to go right?
Good question, Jen. When you're riding really good horse like Sprinter Sacra, he was very straightforward. There was no pressure riding him. I remember going to the start in the Arkle, the year he won the Arkle, and I'm on the way down. It was the second race, obviously, and for me, Cheltenham was all about Sprinter Sacra, and it was a bit that case for a lot of people, a lot of the press. He was being bigged up massively, and you're cantering down to start, and I was my mind was wandering off into the whole excitement of everything, and I was kind of pulling myself out of it and just say, no, it's only a horse race, just do what you do and just keep it simple. And that's what I did, and he won. But yeah, I was potentially getting into overthinking, which is very unlike me.
Yeah, well, you're only human. You might be superhuman on horses like that, but only human. I just remember we were standing beside each other watching Galloping des Champs leave the paddock, a very crowded paddock on Monday, and people were shouting at Paul Townend, go Paul, go Paul. It's something you rarely see, but with those mega magnet horses that have, they've garnered a following, you wouldn't be human if you didn't feel it.
Absolutely, and the cheer that went out as Paul got legged up, and it was brilliant. And it was all teed up, and as much as I fancied Factifile, I wouldn't have been disappointed to see Galloping des Champs win. It was teed up for one of those days, but just brilliant to feel that energy and enthusiasm at Leopardstown.
Yeah, and write him off at your pearl, Galloping des Champs. We'll come back to him another day. We will forward on to the Irish Champion Hurdle. It was built as a match. I tried to make it more than a match. That was my fault. El Fabiolo didn't matter. He made the pace. Pony Ross never really got into it. He ran okay. Anzadam, I think we learned that he's not a Grade 1 championship horse. But what we did learn is that Brighterdaysahead is. And she's backed up two very high-level performances. She's now gone co-favourite at 2-1 for the Champion Hurdle. Can she do it?
I suppose on the book she can. It was a brilliant performance. You would have to slightly question Lossiemouth. Maybe it was the heavy ground. I look back to her form. She has won in heavy before, but it's a couple of seasons ago. She hasn't been tested on it. So she didn't travel or jump as well as you would have liked. She was second to Constitution Hill 12 months ago or 13 months ago in the Christmas hurdle at Kempton on better ground. And, a sharp track like Kempton, she seemed to travel reasonably well. Where she was on the back foot a lot of the way in Leopardstown. So, the jury's out on whether we saw the best of Lossiemouth, but I'm sure she's going to go for the mare's race anyway. But, Brighterdaysahead, to her credit, she put up a big performance. As you said, she's backed up her form. She backed up last year's form. I think she's in a better place heading to the festival this year than last year. So you'd have to respect her. But it's such an open Champion Hurdle now. There isn't really a standout horse in there.
Well, there could be, Barry.
Well, yeah, he goes to Sutherland and he runs in the flat Constitution Hill, and Yogi's been doing schooling sessions with him as well. So, if the miracle does work, he's definitely the one for me, but I'm obviously in a very biased position.
But you don't have to be in a biased position to know he's the best horse.
Yeah, but he needs to jump. It's hard to tell someone going back in if he hits the ground again. So, if he gets his jumping together again, it's hard to look past him.
So my question to you is, and this is on the lips of a lot of people who are listening, what does he achieve by winning at Southall?
Do you know, it's good to get him away, get him a race. You'd like to think he's not going to have any bad experience. He's had a rocky time of it between three falls. If you go back to his school, his gallop in Kempton when he'd go badly afterwards, he's had a rough enough time of it. And he's not a robust kind of aggressive type of horse. He's a kind-natured fella. So he's I think it's the right thing to do. Stick him in the box, bring him racing. There'll be a whole lot of fanfare on the day, if you like. Jockey and the colours, the whole thing. Out of stalls is going to be different. I'm not saying that's going to be any bonus in that, but it'd be nice to think that you could get him away for a good away to have a spin, get a blow. Probably no harm to get a little bit of freshness out of him if he was to go to Champion Hurdle too, because he's been a bit too boisterous, if you like. So I'd say timing would be good in that regard. So I think there's lots of good reasons. I don't know any bad reason for it.
Okay,
Just
imagine he got beat. Mother of God, where would we be then? Okay, well, we won't spend too much time on that, because that'll be for next week's podcast, or even a bit further on. But it looks like Oisin Murphy's going to ride him, so he's not going to exactly lack from the saddle. Aside from the aforementioned races at the Dublin Racing Festival, Barry, there were some other notable performances. I'm going to throw a few at you, and you can say yes or no. Narciso Haas, in my opinion, the first banker. I think that horse I haven't seen a juvenile to beat him.
Yeah, really impressive. As you said, Mark gave him a great ride, judged it well from the front. But the second filly, Selma Devari, I thought she ran some race, because Mark judged the pace. They were going the quickest from the second last, and that's where she made most of her ground. So I'm not saying she's going to go and beat Narciso Has, but she's a big threat to him. But I think the two of them, for me, are the two standout juveniles this season. So, but I would be a big fan of his. But he definitely got things his own way, where she had a bit more on her plate. So that was probably, if I was the one I'd noted down, that was the performance for me, was those two.
Yeah, interesting. And I agree with the filly. She's very, I suppose, Connection said that she was only in Willie's Yard since November, so they've only really got her into the system. You'd think there's more improvement to come. The Tattersall's Ireland Novices Hurdle, the one over 2 miles, where Talk to Talk just got up to beat Ballyfad, and King Rasco Gray was third. I thought that was probably the novice race of the meeting. I think there could be, you could have the Turners winner and the Supreme winner in there potentially. Where would you go with Talk to Talk? There's a lot of conversation about whether he stays at 2 miles or goes up and trip.
Well, Joseph, from what I've read, is committing him to the 2 mile. I suppose for me, the only reason you might step up and trip is he could just give him a little bit more comfort for his jumping. I would have had a similar experience with Simon Sig, who has just had a tendency to miss a hurdle. And I remember mentioning it to Nicky about maybe stepping up to the 2.5 and just give him a little bit more time to measure and jump. And now he bolted up in that, and great performance. So your jumping wouldn't be as badly tested. And the second last on that new course, or sorry, on the old course, should I say, it comes at you fast, downhill run into it. You need a horse on the money at a point of a race when horses are really getting going. So, I suppose depending on your faith in his jumping, he did jump well the last day, but it'll be very different conditions if you have better ground in Cheltenham. So it'll really test his jumping. So that'll be for me the reason why you consider going up and trip.
So you're going to go for the Turners?
No, I'd be happy either way. I think he looks very good, but Joseph seems to be...
We have to get you off this fence, Barry.
God, Jen, no. Well, Joseph was committing him to 2 mile. I wouldn't see any negative if his jumping is as good.
He's a quick horse, isn't he? Like he had to go. He is a quick horse.
He did, and it was probably conditions that were slower than ideal. He was doing his work late on. He was quickening well. I thought JJ gave him a brilliant ride, timed it to a T. To be 2 lengths down in the run to the last, and he was only hands and heels. So there's a lot to like about the horse. He doesn't lack for pace, so he'd be very comfortable in the 2 mile. The only reason I'd consider 2.5 would be just if you felt he needed to give his jump a bit more time.
Were you impressed with the runner-up and the third, Dr. Steinberg, or sorry, not Dr. Steinberg, Ballyfad and King Rasco Gray? I think they have talent.
Oh, definitely. And like that Ballyfad looks a real proper stayer. He looked like he was going to get swallowed up, turning in, and he'd galloping away to the line. But the Supreme, you often need a stayer as well. And Gordon was mentioning him towards that direction. Maybe King Rascal Gray could step up and trip. He'd look very comfortable up and trip, as would Ballyfad. But, it's fine margins, and I suppose it depends what yards other representative yards have, so that can sway a decision.
Yeah, and this is the beauty of the DRF, because all of these horses have already met, and there are some very exciting horses in the UK, but they haven't, not like, in my opinion, sometimes they don't meet meaningful opposition until they get to March, and you don't really know, because they're winning small fields on the bridle. And obviously Nicky Henderson's horse, near top of the betting for the Supreme, is still a very untouched kind of all potential type of horse. The other horse that I thought was particularly noteworthy was Dr. Steinberg, pulled and pulled and pulled, and on heavy ground, which was like the heaviest you'll encounter, ran away from them. Like, Kazansky isn't a bad horse, and he left him at the last as if he was just after joining in.
I know he pulled so hard you were waiting for him at any stage to, to cut out. But away he went, and away he went again. So you mentioned what the performance of the meeting for him, Novice. That was the one for me. Now he'd have the option of going to Turners or going for the Albert Bartlett. Personally, to do that on those conditions and to be as relentless as he was, I think he'd have Albert Bartlett written all over him. He's a proper stayer. That was his first run in 2 months, so he may have been a little bit fresh as well, because he wasn't a horse I would have had down as being as keen as that. But I think on better ground, which we normally have at Cheltenham, a bit more pace in the race, he'd probably settle better, but he's just so relentless. I think 3 miles is written all over him, and he'd be the one for me with non-runner money back again if you were to go for the Albert Bartlett.
Old Park Star was the horse I couldn't think of Nicky Henderson's for the Supreme. Huge talent. Quickly reference Kay Doughty and Romeo Coolio, the 2 novice chasers. Can they win at Cheltenham?
I think Romeo Coolio will have his hands full over 2 mile and better ground. I'd rather see him step up and trip. He's a 7-year-old as well, so I wouldn't be afraid of going 3 mile, but having not had a prep in the middle distance, it would be a big step from 2 miles to 3 miles. So they probably ruled out the option by not going for the 2.5 at the Dublin Racing Festival. But to me, he's more of a stayer. I think Lalamba or Kopek de Boers would give him plenty of it over 2 mile. So yeah, whereas Kate Doughty, that was a good performance, a real step up from Ferios, where she was good, or he was good, but definitely progressive looking. So love the conditions maybe as well. So I'm not saying that's a concern, but seemed very at home on those conditions. But it was a big performance.
We're just about a month out from the Cheltenham Festival now. Maybe next week, I think we're a month out. Can you, with confidence, give us one for that festival, knowing that you're going to get your money back with William Hill anyway, that you saw at the Dublin Racing Festival that you are absolutely with at Cheltenham?
Yeah, well, you mentioned the juveniles, and I would like them, but there could be a little bit of a tussle between the two of them. Where Dr. Steinberg for me for the Albert Bartlett, I think he was very good, and he looks just like a proper relentless galloper.
Yeah, anything that's going to outstay him, they're going to have to be very good. I thought Talk to Talk, wherever he runs, I'd run him in the Supreme. He's bred for 2 miles and his speed, and he's not a robust horse. But Joseph O'Brien, like, if you just back his few National Hunt runners, I think you'd be well ahead. But anyway, that's our preview on that. Before we look ahead to this weekend, I just want to reference a couple of things. Jack Kennedy's now gone 7 winners up on Darragh O'Keefe and the Jockeys Championship. We're in for a good tussle between the pair.
Yeah, I suppose, but Henry's horse has just been out of form, have given, Jack a bit of a chance to get back on top. And then you have the numbers that Gordon has. So if Gordon's horses can keep firing, it'll be very hard for Darragh to turn around. Henry has a big team, but he just wouldn't have the volume. So I think it comes down to back, and 2 obviously very good riders. Jack has been champion jockey before, but I think if he can stay injury free, he looks to be in a very solid place again this year.
Less obvious, well, not less obvious, that's the wrong way to phrase it, but another championships that's going to be very tight is trainers. Gordon is currently 400,000 ahead, right? To you and me, 400,000 is a lot of money in prize money, but that is nothing if you're Willie Mullins and you have this Trojan amount of Grade 1 horses to run in the spring. Can it happen for Gordon? Can it happen this year?
Well, he's definitely put himself in a better position. It's no secret that he hasn't had his horses as ready for their first run. So, horses having the first run at the Down Royal meeting at the start of the season, they weren't just as tuned as they would have been other years. So, and they improved from that to the next run until Christmas. So, he had a brilliant Christmas. It could just be setting him up for his best season. And that could be good enough to get him over the line. But I know he went into Punchestown a few years ago and he was up a lot of money on Willie.
Nearly £1 million.
He was. And I think Willie beat him. I can't remember the figure, but he beat him well in the end. So you can never rule out Willie with the volume he has. And you're talking about second strings, third strings. He's filling 1, 2, 3s in Grade 1 races. So I think Gordon's put himself in the best position. But, I'd say come Punchestown week, if that Willie Mullins show was running, like it's hard to beat them.
Yeah. It's a bit like trying to beat the French in Six Nations. It was really hard to watch that. Anyway, before we get stuck into the weekend preview, we want to remind you that William Hill are offering a free €5 bet when you stake €10 on any race this weekend. The offer is already live and it runs until the end of Sunday. So don't miss out on that. A free €5 bet when you stake 10. So Barry, let's get stuck in. Obviously, we will focus on the Boyne Hurdle and the 10 up sponsored by William Hill on the Sunday, but I am at Naas tomorrow where the feature race is the Opera Hat. I really enjoy this race. JP McManus has had a great record in it the last couple of years. Ellie May won a couple of them. Dino Blue won it last year. Is it as simple as she just goes back to back? Is there any realistic threat to her in the race?
I don't think so. It's hard to make a case for anything to beat her, but she's so consistent. She's 8 wins and 7 seconds from 19 starts or something over fences. So she's ultra consistent. No issue with ground, trip, anything. She's won the race before. No, she's a grade 1 winner over fence a couple of seasons ago. She's won at all the big festivals. No, I think give her credit. She should be a steering job.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And then she'll be straight on to the Mare's Chase at Cheltenham. She's been a fantastic mare. She's probably been in the shadow of some mega mares, but you can almost set your clock by her. So that's the Opera Hat at Naas tomorrow. Hopefully we'll be at Navan on Sunday. Fingers crossed. They pass their inspection at 3 o'clock tomorrow. The William Hill Boyne Hurdle, that's the 250, and that's obviously for the stairs. Give us your idea of how you see the race shaping up and who's the most likely winner from your perspective.
Well, Todd Staffordshire not ran a great race behind Home with the Lee at Goran last time. Obviously similar conditions as well. But he has the benefit and winning form prior to that. But he, those runs will really stand to him. If they're inspecting Navan on Saturday and it goes ahead, it's going to be tough work. Hidden Valley Lake is having his first run of the season, so that's not ideal. And Henry's horses, their form is questionable as well. No, I think Staffordshire not. I think he'll be hard to beat. He's got those hard yards in the book. And it was a good run last time by him Home with the Lee, who to me really sparkled on the day.
Yeah, I agree. I just wonder, and I hope it hasn't left a mark on him, because that ground at Goran was obviously so heavy. Last year we had Mystical Power, that I think he was a dual grade 1 winning novice, and then he went into his first year in open company and he was pretty much a no-show. Is that what Aranci is becoming this year?
Potentially, yeah. Being honest, his Punchestown win was a great win, but I thought Mark Walsh gave him a brilliant ride. Kopek de Boards completely over-raced. I think the race probably slightly fell apart. So, it probably wasn't, it'd be unfair to say wasn't the deepest grade 1 ever won, but I'd say the quality fell out of it. So I don't think Aranci needed to be anything special to win it. So I wouldn't have had him in the bracket of Mystical Power. But he definitely hasn't backed it up that well.
And they're trying something new. They're going way out in trip, having raced him over 2 miles behind Lossiemouth on his last 2 starts. So he's going up to 2 mile 6. For what it's worth, I think Colonel Mustard is still interesting. I know he's 11 years old, and I know he's probably, he's not a grade 1 horse. They tried him in grade 1 company last time, and I can see why. But he's reverting back here to a track and trip he knows very well. And I think he's interesting. Also noteworthy that we don't have honesty policy here. I presume now, Barry, they just go straight to Cheltenham. He's one of the leading lights for the stairs, and we haven't seen him. We've only seen him once this year.
Yeah, and he ran well at Ascot. He was keen enough, but that was a really good run. He was only beaten a couple of lengths, got tired late on. I think he's a horse who improved through last season. I think he stepped up again. So no, I definitely have honesty policy on the shortlist for stairs.
Okay, I do agree. I think there's an awful lot with him that we are yet to really see. The William Hill Racing Bet Builder 10 up Novices Chase is the race I usually enjoy an awful lot. There's only 5 declared at the moment, but JP McManus is a strong hand with the Wall Park and Oscar's Brother. Oscar's Brother is a fantastic Irish racing story. Conor King, former dual champion apprentice jockey when he was with William McCreary. Huge talent, but also huge. Got very tall, got too heavy. Like, that was so hard for him to take. I think now he rides out for Paddy Toomey in the mornings, and he's 2 horses in training himself who rides out in the afternoons. His brother Daniel rides the horse, and after he won the Florida Pearl. It was a noteworthy win because he beat Cocktail Navan, who won subsequent. JP McManus came in and bought it and has left him with the Kings. And I know he's an 8-year-old, Barry, but this horse is a good horse.
Definitely, yeah. No, he won a Grade 3 hurdle in Cork as well, but he's a smart horse. Took a couple of runs to warm the fences really, but then he built on that, and it was a good performance at Punchestown. Now he meets Boss of the Brownies again, who he beat 3 lengths at Punchestown, and Boss of the Brownies is £5 better off. Boss of the Brownies has been second since then, but he's a relentless galloper. He's going to love conditions, but I just think Oscar's brother has a little bit of class. I think he has the edge just to go and beat Boss of the Brownies. So he's definitely he's a horse who's on the up, and probably not the biggest individual in the world, but I just think he has the class to win this race on Sunday. And just maybe you'd be a little bit fearful on the conditions for Boss of the Brownies, but I'd imagine Daniel King, who's a very good rider, would be happy to be patient, and I could see him coming late.
I'm kind of hoping that he wins and throws his hat into the Brown Advisory race, and then that would be his 6th run over fences if he were to run in the Brown Advisory, and then that would mean he'd qualify for the Grand National. So it's all like it has the potential to be a fairy tale.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, why not, Jen?
We have to believe, we have to dream, you know.
Exactly, but this is definitely a good stepping stone for him. Conditions mightn't just be fully in his favour. So he's not the biggest horse in the world, but I do think he has the class.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. Now, I'm going to really need your help for the 420, the William Hill each way extra handicap chase. Big field, heavy ground, 3 miles. It wasn't really my bag. You were adept at tipping away around the back in Navan and picking them off up the straight. What's going to happen here?
Yeah, well, tipping away in Navan is brilliant. You know, slow ground, big fences, lots of time. You know, you have over half a mile in the straight. But yeah, it's a long way from home from the last in the back straight. The one I picked out was Mighty Oak. I thought he looks progressive. He was second in Fairy House to Corn of a Monday, who won in Thurles on Thursday. So that form was franked. He had some nice runs over 2 miles, stepped up to 2.5, and now steps up to 3. So I think there's potential for more improvement again. So no, I thought that was one. Daniel King actually on board as well. So a very capable rider too.
Big day for Daniel King on Sunday. Let's hope it goes ahead. At this juncture, we have to bring in the professionals. So, Barry, last week you were on the money, literally, with Fact to Files. Let's bring in DK, also known as by his christened name, Dave Kellner, to give us the trading room prices and insight for the weekend ahead. And we'll give our naps and see if he can give us any bit of value. DK, how are you at this time of record?
I'm very well, thank you. And I know you will have already congratulated Barry on the Fact to File winner last weekend at the DRF. Unbelievable performance. And yeah, I'm very well. I'm looking forward to this weekend. Hopefully the weather cooperates as well.
Did you make any moolah at the weekend over the DRF?
I didn't actually, Jane, surprisingly enough. You'd have thought I'd be rolling in it, but that's not the way it went, unfortunately. Gaelic Warrior, I thought, ran a decent race behind Fact to File in second, and yeah, there's some really impressive performances, but not impressive performances I was on the right side of, unfortunately.
And there was me thinking you were the professional. Well, here we are. Let's kick on to the weekend ahead. Barry, I'll let you go first. Who is your nap of the weekend?
I'm going to stick with Staffordshire Knot. I think Hidden Valley Lake and Better Days Ahead are as two dangers, and they're both coming there in the first run. So no, I'm going to stick with Staffordshire Knot.
Staffordshire Knot, Barry, is currently 5-2 favourite. Hidden Valley Lake in the betting at 11-4. Better Days Ahead is 7-2. Colonel Mustard 13-2. 8-1. Iransi Maxim's 8-1 as well. Can I just read you a quote from the trading room about your selection here, Staffordshire Knot, Barry? They said it was a horrible race to price with one thing or another, all of the horses in the race having one thing or another to prove, but we'll be happy to lay Staffordshire Knot as he's better suited going right-handed, and he isn't one you want to be in the trenches with. That's the quote from the trading room on Staffordshire Knot, Barry.
Well, we'll have to just wait and see, I guess, DK.
The trading room haven't heard that Barry Geraghty's tipping it. The comment is going to change when this podcast goes live.
That's it, Jane. Unless they've been listening in and they've just got no respect. But I'm sure it's not that way, and I'm sure Staffordshire Not will run a good race. They actually said they want to be against Hidden Valley Lake as well, given the slightly lacklustre form of the Bromhead yard currently. So they want to take on the top two in the betting in the Boyne Hurdle.
Yeah, I love how the trading room tell you who they're not with, but they don't actually tell you who they're with. So they're rarely wrong. With my pick for the weekend, DK, I'm going to go for that listed race, the Mayor's Hurdle, and I'm going to go with Zanush, course and distance winner. What are you going to do for me there?
Very popular. 11 to 8 Zanush at the top of the betting. Poetisa is available at 11 to 2. Sopolana is a 13 to 2 shot, 10 to 1 Apples Jane. How can you ignore that one at 10 to 1? 10 to 1 Change Your Stars and I'll Raise a Glass as well. Ask the trading room about this one and the fancy Zanush, 11 to 8 at the top of the betting. I guess the second favourite slightly fluffed her lines last time out and she's opposable with Zanush popular at 11 to 8.
Apples Jane to win the Apples Jade Hurdle. It sounds right, but I think she should be around 100 to 1. Thank you very much, DK.
Yes.
That gives us a steer into the weekend. And don't forget that if you like the sounds of any of our picks this weekend, you can combine them in a racing bet builder. William Hill have the best builder out there. So if you want to check out the app or you want to check out online, you can get building your bets for Naas, for Navan, and for more. And let's hope they go ahead this weekend. So that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed. And if you have done so, please subscribe to the podcast. Maybe you want to leave a review. Please let them be 5 stars. If you want to give us any comments, any suggestions on talking points you want discussed next week, just let us know. You can follow us on Instagram, on X, on Facebook. And for the very best prices, if you haven't already done so, please download the William Hill app. And of course, always, please gamble responsibly. Next week, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm quite excited about this, Barry. You and I are going to be sitting down in Cullentraw with one of the preeminent trainers of his generation, Gordon Elliott. We're going to sit down to discuss the Cheltenham contenders, reflect on the season so far, and just get an insight into the man that makes Gordon Elliott tick.
Should be exciting, Dave.